gonna chug it. Do it.
Whatever it takes.
Right? Dontrese.
Yes.
But you guys are not doing demos out there?
We'll do them afterwards.
Afterward. Okay.
T-minus 7 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, my mom has AFib and she's never felt her heart flutter once.
Hey, what's
They
up,
were
man?
telling her in AFib now. And she's like, really? So they were. I have felt mine flutter for years. Once a year or something. Yeah, I'll call her and see how she's doing. She had a steroid shot today in her back. And she called me after she got home, but she said everything was numb from her blood on down. She wasn't feeling any pain, she was just feeling.
Started getting seated. It's time to go. That's not what we're expecting.
I know.
Whatever.
I tried so hard.
I think you're taking it a little bit too seriously.
No, listen. I had this idea in my head.
Yeah.
This little bit.
Uh-huh.
And it just did not. 20 years ago, maybe. I told her, I like, no such a time, so I need the black t-shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Every pair of shoes.
So,
The one that went for that.
Yeah, are you doing like the sound system?
Dontrese, maybe sit on one of these because you're going to get a Q&A. You want to which one?
Like, this is not good. This is not good.
Yeah, would you rather? Well, because we can get there, we won't even see the screen if we all sit up on the street. Unless you're
We should be along here because we'll move over there.
If you
And we're not full. I don't think so. I think we got later. We're on this side. In this area. Yeah, right in this area. Danish.
So Zane, I misspoke. We're gonna have Zane. I forgot. Zane on the play, so we're just gonna have.
Okay.
We can do it once it starts.
How you doing, Friday?
That's okay. I'll speak.
Zane knows.
That one taken?
I do have a question. I'll think of something specifically for you. If you have
I'm sorry. I thought Zane's in the accessible. And he's also
Somewhere else. I cannot believe how many good friends we have.
This is not church, the front row is fine. It's far from it.
You want to switch this?
No. You guys have a seat.
You sit next to the boy.
So, wow, we're actually filling it up. This is awesome. No, you guys are good, man. Y'all stay right there so you can see it. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
chairs here in the middle.
Chairs in the middle.
Yep.
Right there.
How's everybody?
Good.
This is cool. This is really cool. This is like a chakra session, you know? It's what we were talking about out at the beer cooler. Everybody was like, you know, this feels like old times. Well, yeah, like about a year and a half. Old time. 1 minute?
1 minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
So anyway, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. This is a very cool crowd. Very interesting. Every one of you is super cool. You'll be amazing.
That's how I hear you get invited to these things. It's like the one criteria.
You have to be cool.
You have to be cool.
You have to be cool.
When he told me this, I had anxiety.
You're not
Like,
as cool as Dontrese, but
He ain't wearing his cap.
no one.
Yeah, right.
Where's his lid?
I introduced my daughter and son to Dontrese. I got to say this. This is so funny. I introduced my
All right, 30 seconds.
and my daughter said, Dontrese, you know, got Arthur. He got Boulevard changed to Arthur S. Boulevard. And she looks at me and she goes, you know, we'll never be as cool as Dontrese.
All right, 10 seconds.
Okay.
we need another chair. That's my chair.
We got it.
All right,
We'll get you.
Oh, yeah.
We'll change it.
Live streaming.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello to all of you here and everyone watching on YouTube, and welcome to the famed and very cool In Your Ear Studios. My name is Jennifer Bear, and we are all here tonight to watch two professional storytellers engage in authentic and in-depth conversations with some of Richmond's most inspiring changemakers. This episode features the cultural awareness, hidden history, and the social change currently in motion here in Richmond, all due to grassroots efforts of remarkable individuals within the community. The Good Road is all about communities and their stories. So I thought it would be fitting to share with you the story about a woman from Ohio who, after living in a variety of places that never quite felt like home, found her way to Richmond, Virginia. She acknowledged two very important feelings almost immediately after moving here. Number one, the city's energy felt different. It felt more alive, more creative, more purposeful. And two, she was home. After a few years, she started meeting an interesting mix of people. David, a tech innovator and healer. Dontrese, an educator and activist. Dean, a historian and writer. Craig and Earl, two philanthropologist storytellers. And Carlos, a creative and musical genius. She quickly realized that this circle of friends is partly responsible for the city's creative, innovative, and purposeful energy she felt almost immediately after moving here. They are people who believe in community, collaboration, and compassion, and they walk the walk. They connect do-gooders to other do-gooders and continue to grow their community of creative change makers within the larger Richmond community. It's people like this whose stories should be told. Because it's people like this whose stories have the power to change communities. It's people like this whose stories have the power to change individuals. And it's people like this whose stories have the power to raise the vibration of anyone who decides to listen. Her journey to Richmond and into this circle of friends led her to this exact moment, in this space, in front of all of you very cool people, with the honor and privilege of welcoming you all here tonight as we celebrate and support two do-gooders who decided to create a TV show about other do-gooders, and after traversing the world in season 1, chose to kick off their sophomore season right here in RVA. And the timing could not have been more perfect. This episode explores racial reconciliation and features the activist transformed Robert E. Lee Monument and the calls for its removal. It offers us a deeper understanding of Kehinde Wiley's direct response to Monument Avenue in his Rumors of War statue through the captivating words and insight of VMFA curator Valerie Oliver. And finally, we get an opportunity to see Richmond through the eyes of the Hidden in Plain Sight initiative, which allows us to virtually time travel and explore the distinct but often overlooked sites around Richmond that tell the story of the Black experience throughout history. This Richmond-centered episode premiered at the Richmond International Film Festival and was awarded Best of Festival in the Episodic category, and we are about to watch it live as it airs nationally on World Channel at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Now, some of you may not realize this, but the show's secret sauce is none other than Carlos Chafin and Andrea Buchheit of In Your Ear Studios, who sound design, produce, and compose the soundtrack for each episode. Yeah! And I know Carlos is dying to come up here and talk to you about all the things. Carlos Chafin.
Yes. Thanks, Jen. Thanks to everyone. Thank you guys online for putting up with us, watching all this. You're in for a real treat. I'm just padding between now and when you actually get to see something really entertaining. But nonetheless, I do have a few things I'd like to tell you about, if you don't mind. First of all, we're in Your Ear studio space. In Your Ear was a company that we put together years ago, way too many years ago, over 30 years ago, to write music for film and television. Some of that would be advertising, some of that would be strictly entertainment. And through the years, we've gone through various different mixes of this. For a while, we were really, really into writing advertising stuff. We wrote stuff for, we had campaigns for Coke and you know, all these different magazines, Time Magazine, and we wrote music for so many things I can't believe. I was on a visit one time in Ohio. I got up out of the hotel room and went out and realized when I walked down the corner of the main street, main financial part of the district, that we had written the music or the jingle for every single financial institution on that corner. And I realized, you know, maybe I should find a different career. You know, there's too much of that. But nonetheless, In Your Ear started, and that's what we got into. And then we realized we needed to build our own facility. We needed to have a place in Richmond where we could actually produce this kind of work, because I was traveling all over the world. I was producing things in everywhere, L.A., Chicago, Dallas, you name it. And we needed to do it at home. So I found the perfect place. This is 4 dilapidated row houses on 18th Street that were burned out. They were just awful. It was the worst block in the city of Richmond. Really. It really was. There was a chain link fence around the whole thing, and the cops would not let you come into this block. Seriously. We bought it for a good price. And we rehabbed it because we wanted actually to save this look. We wanted this Richmond look, this Churchill, Shockoe Bottom thing. I didn't want to move to an office park without a front door. I wanted to move to a place with 4 front doors. And we did, and what this enabled us to do, much like Abbey Road in London did, they bought an old, beautiful house in a suburb in London, and they went out in the backyard where the dilapidated gardens were overgrown and everything, and they tore it out, and they built their recording studios. So the houses became the front, and the studios were built from the ground up according to technical specifications that allowed us to do what we wanted to do. We hired, very fortunately, the top architects we could find that had rebuilt all the sound stages in Hollywood. They had built plenty of places of their own. They built Sony Tokyo. And we invited them to come to Richmond and say, share your vision and build us a technical facility on the back of these old houses. And you're sitting in it. It's pretty cool. There are technical features of this room I can't get into tonight, but you're 50 feet from Broad Street. You will not hear any ambulances. You will not hear any obstructions. This is a bunker. If the world comes to an end, you won't know it for a while. So, we went through history. We built a building. We had to change. The recording business changed. A lot of big recording studios went out of business because everybody can record on their computer now, right? No problem. Or your phone. So we're irrelevant. We're unnecessary. We don't need to be here. Except for we do know a few things about getting sound right and making music work for a TV show. And so we've made some good friends, and they've kept us alive, and we're so thankful for that. So we moved through this whole thing. We pivoted a little bit, you know, when this business thing started to change, and we came up with an idea called Shaco Sessions. Shaco Sessions was a meet and greet business thing where business meets art. My idea was that, yeah, you could go to the Altria and go to various events, and you know, people would, you know, the Dominions, the big companies around town would cover that. You know, it'd be cool, and they'd pay for everything, the ballet, things like that. But what about younger companies? What about little companies that wanted to get involved in supporting the arts? Well, let's invite them to a party, serve them some of our good Virginia beer, Richmond beer, and then we're going to connect you with the artist and let you meet them. And when you do, the cool thing is that I'm not going to tell you what to do. Just meet them and do things. Come up with ideas. One of those things, this is a little bit of a reach, but one of those ideas that came out of all that, it was talked about during all that, was a TV show. A TV show we're going to watch tonight, The Good Road. Friends were made. Bonds were made. We had some really cool times figuring out what we were going to do with this show. And all of a sudden, boom, we're on national TV with a show that these two amazing guys, Craig and Earl, you know, you guys, you know, it takes vision. It takes a story, and you had one. But then you took that to the right people and the right friends, and all of a sudden, you've got support, and you've got a show, and it's going to be on the air, and all of a sudden, we're not in season 1. That's already happened. We're in season 2. Oh, my gosh. And here we are, and we're getting ready to see it. The beginning show for season 2. And guess what? It's about Richmond. And the people in the show are sitting right with you. If you want to know anything about this show deeper than what you see tonight, you have no excuse but to turn around and go, okay, spill the beans. So there you go. I have what? 3 minutes? That's a long time. So nonetheless, what I will say about this is that, so Craig and Earl came to us and came to me and said, okay, we've placed this show. We're rewinding about a year and a half. We've placed this show. Now what? I'm like, now what? What do you mean? And they're like, well, we have to finish it. I go, well, okay, you've shot it. And yeah, they go, well, yeah, but we need to finish the show. It needs to turn into a real show. We got to deliver something to the people that are going to distribute it. So I'm scratching my head going, well, okay, we've done this before. This is cool. We got this. Not a problem. And a few things happened, and luckily they were able to draft one of the people that had helped them create the show, Andy Dusing, who's in Nashville. Wish he was here tonight because he's an absolutely awesome talent. He is really the secret sauce of the show, not me. You know, Andrea's pretty cool, but I'm not. You know, but Andy has done an amazing job of pulling this show together, because Craig and Earl will talk to anybody. And if there's a camera near, you can shoot it. I mean, it's not, And luckily, Jeremy, who does the sound for the show, who does a great job, he actually captures some of this nonsense on so we actually can put it together. But the cool thing is, Andy takes all this nonsense and he puts it together and he goes, we got a really cool show. This is going to be awesome. He calls me up. He's excited. He's like, wait till you see this, And we get this thing, and next thing we know, Andrea and I are downloading his rough cut and his sound files that are actually Jeremy's sound files. And they're all cut together, and we're listening to it, and it's up to our talents to turn it into a show. There's no music. There's sometimes a lot of gunshots and other things that we have to figure out if we want to feature them or bury them. We have all that kind of stuff going on. But we have to figure out how to turn this thing into a bloody show. And then next thing you know, we're in there, doing stuff. And we'll talk a little bit more about the creative process probably during the Q&A, because we're going to have a Q&A session for this tonight. And you'll get to, Jen will actually ask some really intelligent questions. I'll just be maybe answering or trying to answer one. But one of the things we'd like to talk about, is that when we get these things, the music is a strange problem, because these places they like to go are the worst places on the planet. The first show we did was Bangkok. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with Bangkok? I mean, what kind of music do they listen to in Bangkok, And, so I'm doing some discovery, and Craig's playing me some stuff, and I'm figuring out some things. And we had a very funny moment about Bangkok, by the way. I got to tell a story on you, Earl. So we wanted to do this piece of music that was. You want me to finish, Andrea? Okay. So anyway, we'll talk about that during the Q&A. At any rate, you are in for a super, super, super treat. This is The Good Road Season 2. Thank you so much for coming out.
I'm ready when you are.
All right, let's do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
For The Good Road has been provided by...
There's a lot of good happening all over the globe, and to see it all, Toyota offers vehicles designed for both everyday drives and rugged roads off the beaten path, like Toyota Tundra, Tacoma, and the body-on-frame 4Runner. These off-road machines feature available technology for added traction, performance, and capability. So no matter where your globetrotting takes you, off-road doesn't mean off-limits. Proud sponsor of The Good Road, Toyota. Let's go places.
Tomorrow's breakthroughs start with the determination and inspiration of today. AMD helps solve the world's toughest and most interesting challenges by creating high-performance computing technologies.
And by Uncommon Giving, the Generosity Company.
At Plow and Hearth, we believe that the place you are can become the place you want to be.
Philanthropy Journal. Stories about bold people changing the world. Richmond, Virginia is dear to my heart. I live here. It's a place of beauty, history, and community. But one place casts a dark shadow on the city that I love. Monument Avenue, a street so named for the Confederate statues and memorials that adorn it. In the wake of the brutal killing of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, many parts of the country are attempting to reconcile with their past, and Richmond is no different. For many African Americans, these symbols are a constant reminder of the oppression, pain, and suffering that was inflicted on their ancestors, and the racism they still experience every day. For certain white Americans, it's a symbol of pride and heritage in their family history. And for many, it's just another city landmark.
The willingness to ignore, sweep under the rug, or glorify its troubled history is waning. The statues are coming down. But this is not where the story of racial reconciliation ends. It's where it begins. Leave them up, put them in a museum, take them down, tear them down? How do we acknowledge the horrific reality of our history without glorifying or distorting it? It's a small step in a much larger journey towards racial justice, but getting it right is important.
Early on during the wave of social unrest that followed the murder of George Floyd, I went to the center of the protests in Richmond, the Robert E. Lee statue on Monument Avenue. I was accompanied by some gracious friends of mine to discuss their perspective on the situation as African Americans. My friends Ace and Zane are both entrepreneurs here in Richmond, and I valued their perspective on the statues and race in general in the city. What we experienced when we got there changed the tenor and depth of our conversation.
It seems like you're gonna have a hard time cleaning that up.
Oh well, nobody else is helping me. State ain't doing a damn thing.
Cleaning a second place trophy right now. What's the end game?
There is no end game.
There is an end game.
What?
Equality for people of all races, frankly.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
It does not matter. No, all you're gonna do is create havoc like what these rioters did over the past week or so.
You're paying attention now, aren't you?
I was paying attention back during the Martin Luther King riots. You remember that?
Because right now you're telling me we don't need to take statues down. It seems like you're not paying attention.
You don't.
Do we have statues in Nazi Germany? We don't have any of those up because we don't glorify the fact that the war was lost, man. Those are treasonous individuals on American soil.
You're not a Virginian, I'll tell you. You're not proud of your state.
We are proud of our state.
We're not by taking this down.
We're not proud of this part of our city, is what we're not proud of.
Why don't you grab a broom and come out here?
We don't want it cleaned up.
I'm good.
You're missing it.
You're a moron.
This adds an appropriate context.
Virginia.
This is historical
to look
context.
Like this.
This man's position is indicative of the broader controversies surrounding the statue. This confrontation gave way to a conversation about the current moment, though not with him.
We've protested, we've marched, we've kneeled, we've had conversations, we've, broken bread with police officers. At what point do you just start burning?
Yeah.
And at what point does that wake people up? It seems like it has, finally.
It's represented actually in all the graffiti, the decades and decades of frustration and hurt.
Yeah, I'd rather not have a collection of second place trophies through the middle of our city.
Yeah.
Where else do you see that happen in the world? A lot of people are saying the foundation's cracked of our country, and I would argue that it is firmly intact. Our foundation was never designed for people who look like us to win, to be successful. What I don't want to do is be placated by the fact that we're taking a monument down, or we've announced that we're taking a monument down. As soon as I see that monument down, I'll believe that we took the monument down.
Yeah.
It's progress, and we can celebrate that. I think we run into this in the startup world a lot, right?
Yeah,
You hit a major milestone, this momentous occasion, then there's more work to be done.
The Black Lives Matter movement should establish for us the bottom, the baseline for what we're willing to accept as a society, and we should build from there. It should not just be that justice is just enough. We should all be helping each other to reach our full potential as a country, and that's good for everyone. Innovation comes from disruption. We have disruption. People from all across the spectrum have come together to say, this is not the system that we want. We're not doing anything different than we might have done 100 years ago. Let's take the next 100 years to do some things that are really different and actually innovate in the space of equity.
Statistically, African Americans are more likely to catch and die from COVID. And then to have the George Floyd killing, but it seems like there's a bit of an assault right now.
With respect to COVID, I hope our memories are long, that minority communities are disproportionately affected, that the low-wage income jobs are the ones that actually keep our country turning.
Yes.
I hope that we remember that Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and died at the hands of the cops, and the cops tear gassed and beat the living hell out of people for being upset about it. I hope our memories are long, that all of those things have happened and have led to this, and that as soon as a monument comes down, it's like, okay, you got what you wanted. I think that's a representation that we're getting somewhere, but we want to be seen as humans, and that's not unreasonable to ask for. That's the real work that we've got to focus on. If it's just this, we have missed the mark.
Protest takes many forms, and only a few blocks from Monument Avenue and sitting on the doorstep of the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts is one of the most striking responses to oppression I've ever seen, Kehinde Wiley's Rumors of War. We spoke with Valerie Oliver, the curator of modern and contemporary art at the much-loved museum.
For so long, Monument Avenue has really been a gravitational pull for the city.
Right.
And to have a sculpture that in many ways is in conversation or dialogue with Monument Avenue is appropriate for our times, but it's also appropriate for the museum to begin shifting that dialogue and that gravitational pull.
Well, it's not without controversy.
No. Well, aesthetics in and of itself is about evoking emotion. But if it's about provocation, that's a very different kind of sensibility.
And you try to stay away from provocation?
No, contemporary art isn't about staying away from provocation. If you have a dominant narrative that's consistent, you might want to shake that up. And artists have an uncanny ability to do that. And they can do it in ways that are subtle, and they can do it in ways that are bold. And this does it in a way that's supremely bold.
Can you talk a little bit about Kehinde?
Sure. So Kehinde comes to the larger art scene probably in the early 2000s. He's someone that grew up in Los Angeles, and his mother took him to the Huntington.
Okay.
You know, he got hooked on these sort of tropes of power and grandeur, and that's the sort of thing that motivated him, you know, to see these amazing portraitures. And he's in a residency at the Studio Museum in Harlem, and he's walking down the street, and he sees this mugshot of a young African-American man. And he thinks, instead of having ourselves represented in this manner, what if we affixed ourselves within that sort of trope of grandeur, of iconography, of being icons?
Right.
And that really propelled this whole way of working, where he takes iconic images from the 17th century, 18th century, and he affixes the Black body inside of those.
Kehinde first came to Richmond in 2016 during a retrospective of his work at the VMFA. Valerie described his reaction when he first saw Monument Avenue during a driving tour of the city.
To see not only these men on horseback, but these Confederate memorials, and the fact that they're 20 feet in the air, in the case of Lee, almost 60 feet in the air. I mean, these are grand statements.
Right, yeah.
And he is absolutely blown away by it. But he's also, it fills him with a sense of dread. So what does it mean to have symbols of power in 1907, which in the case of J.E.B. Stuart Monument, which this one is patterned after.
How exact is it in terms of dimension?
A 1-to-1 ratio.
Wow. Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Yeah. That seed was planted to do this sculpture back in 2016. He told us, I am working on something. It was inspired by Richmond, and it belongs in Richmond. And we were like,
oh, do tell.
Do. And when we saw it, we were like, whoa. This is a game changer. You know, the dialogue has really been about, do you keep them up, do you take them down?
Right.
Period. And Kehinde just came through from the side door and said, we don't have to have this binary.
Right.
There's room. There's room for more monuments. Leave them. Let's be in conversation with them. That's the way you contextualize a monument, not with a plaque, Who stops their car and reads a plaque that contextualizes a monument?
Right.
No
It
one.
just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. Monuments deserve a monumental response, and that's what he offered.
We sat down with Valerie at the Museum Cafe to dig deeper into the power of Kehindi's work.
Part of the allure of it, I think, for many, is that they see themselves reflected in that monument. And then those people who feel that they're reflected in the monument are people who have been oppressed.
The character itself, is it based on anybody?
Kehinde talks about really who gets memorialized.
Yeah.
You know, it is the everyday person that one never sees memorialized. I mean, now we see these makeshift memorials when people are murdered at the hands of, in this case, of police.
It's a poignant piece.
Yes.
Based on what's going on now. Do you guys feel like you have a responsibility to help the rest of the community understand this point in time or what we could be?
This museum is the people's museum.
Yeah.
And our role is to really be reflective of the community. History is constantly unfolding.
Right.
And artists speak to that. Artists are not the sort of romanticized notion of being, you know, hermetically sealed, working and endeavoring in a vacuum. Artists are citizens of this country. They are always in conversation. It's my job to bring those conversations to the museum. We live in this society where we're in a state of constant amnesia. There's always the new, the next thing, the next thing. People don't even know their histories. To make plain what your history is and to always have new narratives to emerge allows that history just to be what it is, history.
When you look at the Robert E. Lee Monument now, I see it as beautiful. Actually,
gorgeous.
Hashtag fixed. They fixed it,
Yes.
you know?
There's so many different beautiful pieces that people have come and painted.
It's the people's monument. You know, that mark making.
Yeah.
Everyone has had a mark.
A lot of the tags and the graffiti started very angry, and I completely understand it. It did kind of evolve over time.
But it's now because it's a memorial too. I was just thinking, as you walk around, you're learning about all of the people who we failed as a society. So when you walk around and you're reading about Tamir Rice, and you're reading about Sandra Bland, and you're reading about Michael Brown, you are creating a place of peace for them.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why that mark making became less angry.
Right.
And more about love and more about memories and a persistence, a resistance, you know, a resistance to being erased and forgotten. That's why there's the hashtag say their names. When you say someone's name, you keep them alive. And Monument Avenue looks so powerful to me now. It is something about the vacancy of those pedestals. There's something really powerful about that.
And oftentimes, I feel like in today's society, it's whose side are you on? Everything's binary, right? Which party it is, you know, where do you identify? Art helps you to contextualize a complex world.
Well, you realize that nothing is monolithic, right? There's no monolithic response. But we're all united. I mean, we're all part of the human family. So it really behooves us to really get it right for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's why I think these protests are so powerful. So if we're not out on the street saying this is wrong, we're evoking John Lewis. Oh my God, I love that man. And when you see something wrong, you have to say something. So it's just a whole way that we think in this country needs to be challenged, and I think that's what's happening. And hopefully we go through all the messiness to come out on the other side a lot better.
We left the VMFA blown away by Valerie's insights and perspectives on art, history, and basically everything. The white experience in Richmond has been the dominant narrative from the beginning, and minority voices and histories have suffered.
Dontrese, Dean, and David are trying to change that. They are the creators of Hidden in Plain Sight, an educational initiative using technology, specifically augmented reality, to resurrect the past. They're creating interactive experiences at locations around the city that are historically and culturally significant to the Black experience in Richmond.
Dontrese Brown is not new to cultural change. He helped spearhead the petition that transformed the boulevard in Richmond into Arthur Ashe Boulevard, named for the famous African-American tennis player who called Richmond home. We spoke with him at the Hippodrome, one of the many sites they hope to preserve.
Yeah, this is big time for us from a Black American culture. This is the center of everything for us here in Richmond.
Well, what was it?
It was originally a theater. A lot of entertainers came here. It was a stop on the Chitlin circuit.
Like famous black acts?
Yeah.
Give some
Don
names.
Coltrane, B.B. King, Louis Armstrong,
This is
Miles Davis. This was the happening spot.
Big time stuff.
Yeah. And this area, Jackson Ward, was considered the Harlem of the South.
So the Jackson Ward neighborhood back in the day was...
It was hopping. It was an affluent area. It was a safe area for Black Americans. It was entertainment. It was food. It was culture. And just the energy within this area is phenomenal.
While we spoke, David and Dean prepped the gear that they would need for a preliminary 360 video capture of the space.
So how does it make a difference in the world?
Richmonders walk by these things all the time and not knowing the context and the history behind them. We feel that it's imperative to continue to tell the true narrative of the Black experience here in Richmond and how it has actually built our country.
How many locations? What's the project?
So
scale?
right now we're looking at 10 to 12 locations initially, and then we're going to expand that. So you'll see, hidden in plain sight Richmond. Then there could be a hidden in plain sight Jamestown. But what we want to do is scale it here first as much as we can and then expand it.
Roll it out. So who's Dontrese? What do your kids think of you? Are you a community activist? Or are you just a guy with crazy ideas?
Well, I'll tell you that last one is probably right. My son is 12 and my daughter is 14. And after the George Floyd incident happened, we're watching all the news things and trying to cover and trying to educate them on what's going on. And my son says, so why didn't he just get up off his neck? And then he asked me, had I been involved in things like this? I said, of course I have. And then he looks at me with these old big innocent eyes and says, but you did Arthur Ashe Avenue. What are you going to do now? It really motivated me when I'm sitting across from Dean and Dean says, how can I help you?
Right.
And then my thought was my son's voice saying, Dad, what are you going to do now? And so this is part of that, what are you going to do now?
I love it, man. What's your son's name?
Quincy.
I'm gonna call it the Quincy question. What you gonna do now?
What you gonna do now?
About it now?
That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The Hippodrome is a beacon to Black culture, and it may be undervalued and underappreciated, but at least it still exists. Many of the most important and oftentimes the most painful historical sites highlighted by Hidden in Plain Sight have been literally erased from history. People and traffic rerouted around them or through them, paved over into parking lots, or simply demolished. And this is true all over the country, not just in Richmond.
This is a site of Lumpkin's Jail that was considered at the time the devil's half acre. Probably one of the worst places you wanted to be in America was in Lumpkin's Jail. And it wasn't a jail in regards to someone who committed a crime. It was where they actually housed the slaves before they walked on a journey towards the tunnel, which we'll go through, in which they were either hanged or sold.
So that's the two options?
Yes, those were the two options. Yeah, and majority of the ones that were hanged were because of their rebellion. Their owners didn't appreciate some of the things that they were doing or whether they were rebelling against the system in general. There's really no major marker here.
No, you would
There's
never
really
know
no
it's here.
historical, hey, come check this out. It's a parking lot. It just continually kept weighing on me. The fact that our major struggles and our major fight is being erased, literally being erased.
I am embarrassed to tell you, but in the quarter century I've lived in Richmond, I've never actually been right here. People don't talk about it.
Right. Of course, the history behind it is an ugly history, but we want to talk about that ugly history. We want folks to understand the true pain and suffering that happened here. But we also want to talk about how it's propelling us to do wonderful things, right?
Yeah.
And so part of the Hidden in Plain Sight is not only to bring attention to the painful reality of what was, but it's also to open the window to the exciting things of what will be.
Well, and I love that. You're using technology to actually bring it alive and not let history be erased.
Dontrese took us further into the site, through a tunnel, under an overpass, and surrounded by highways. It's almost as though it was purposely tucked away.
So just imagine spending the night, a day, or hours in there with other slaves, coming out shackled and chained in a place which at the time was considered a marketplace. But the things that you're buying are people, are human, are slaves.
God.
It's sacred ground. I walk very delicately when I walk these grounds, because I just feel that I need to provide so much respect for those that are, maybe some remains are still buried here. Maybe, you know, the echoes of my ancestors are still in this field. It's a piece of history that should be elevated and talked about more so that when folks are walking or driving by, they understand the significance of this area.
I mean, think about it, probably a day like today, it's pretty, you know, and it's market day.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know how old these trees are, right? I don't know how old these bricks are, these stones. But I know they were here when a lot of these things happened. The voices that they've captured, the experiences and the screams and the pain that they've seen over the years.
These are
blocks.
basically the blocks.
These are the
where they were
auction
sold.
blocks, yeah. It's painful, you know, but that's part of what inspires me. That's part of what inspired Dean and David to be a part of this. You know, this drives us. So this area is basically what's considered the town gallows during the time. But this was a concrete parking lot.
What explains the crazy light poles?
The light poles just hanging out someplace. And they uprooted all that, and I guess they don't know what to do with it now.
Yeah.
But hopefully, we're going to figure that out. And we'll have folks join us. I mean, this is something that's going to take a lot of us. So once we get this off the ground, we'll be able to make some good partnerships, people with the same vision, and really telling the true story of the Black American experience here in the city.
Richmond, like America, has a dark and difficult past, but it's encouraging to see these glimmers of hope and possibility through the people striving to make a difference in their community. We can all be part of the change if we choose to be, and change is coming to Richmond. There's no easy solution, and it's going to be messy, but we like the way Valerie put it. We're all united, we're all part of the human family. It really behooves us to get it right for everyone.
There's so much more to explore, and we want you to join us on The Good Road.
For more in-depth content, meet us on the internet at thegoodroad.tv.
Hear more great stories, connect to organizations, and make sure you download our podcast, Philanthropology.
Funding for The Good Road has been provided by...
Every road is a good road when you're behind the wheel of a Toyota hybrid. From the Toyota Venza and Sienna to Highlander Hybrid and RAV4 Hybrid.
I cried through
remove
that
it. You
whole
wanna sit
thing.
here?
I don't know why.
What happened here? It's me. I'll sit here. Dontrese, why don't you sit here?
One more mic.
You need another mic? We can drag that one over here. You good?
Sitting next to Carlos.
Don't stand on the box.
Don't stand on the box.
We can bring that one over. Check one, check one. Yeah. Earl, you want me to do that? Yeah. I'm in that union.
Actually,
I'm not allowed to do that.
That's pretty funny. How cool is that? I mean, really.
Is that, I don't know, you guys, is this good? Too much? Too close?
perfect.
It's perfect.
Can I say before we get started that with the Q&A that all of the things that we've created here has been such an amazing group effort. Andy, you know, Carlos referenced his relationship with Andy Dunsing. Really, Daytime Emmy nominated Andy Dunsing because of his work with the editing. It's a collaboration with people like Andy and Carlos and Andrea and Jeremy, who's here with us. And Earl and I just kind of are there to look pretty. Okay, maybe not. No, but so in the second episode of the season, we actually focus on Charleston, and for Andy and Earl and I, the privilege has been telling stories from these two amazing American cities who are tragically tied together because of the Civil War. And both cities, and you'll see in next week's episode in Charleston, both cities have struggled with the complexities and the tragedies of being part of this awful war that dominated our history. And I can't be more proud, and I know Earl's the same way about Charleston, of how progressives in our cities have moved beyond it and are trying to move our societies beyond it. So, and thanks to Carlos and Andrea for allowing us to be here in this amazing studio. This place has a very special spot in our hearts. And, you know, Carlos, literally today, we had to do some final voiceover and some other things, and he was finalizing some content for a very important episode for me. My wife is from Puerto Rico, and he was finalizing some content from Puerto Rico, and he was there. Seriously, this is crazy. I can't even think about it. He's there playing guitar, composing a song as the scene is happening. And this man right here is composing a song on the fly, and it's just beautiful. I think the first time that I saw him do this, I think it was actually Rex Richardson. I walked in, who has a bit, very famous local trumpet player. And I walked in, and I'm like, Rex is there, and he's in that kind of breezeway, and he's on the trumpet. And I'm like, I had come over here to do something with Carlos. And I'm like, hey, Rex, what are you doing, man? He's like, I'm playing a part on the Good Road. And I'm like, what? Rex, who is like an amazing trumpet player, is in the breezeway doing this little bit that if you heard the trumpet in the Hippodrome segment with Dontrese, that's Rex. And, you know, a woman who I work with a lot, Elizabeth, has some content in one of our episodes. And, you know, it really is a community, family, and feel for the show. This isn't a bunch of big Hollywood people. This is people in Richmond and Charleston creating content that, and in Nashville, in the case of Andy, creating content that we love and we want to bring to the world. So, sorry, that was way too long, Jen, but.
Thank you. And that was perfect. So I do have some prepared questions, but I know we would love to take questions from you guys. So think of some, and we'll open it up after a bit. This one's for Craig. The confrontation at the Lee Monument was pretty hard to watch and showed us a very real side of this issue, the Southern Pride perspective. Did you have any reservations including that footage in the show?
I honestly, I don't like that scene. I don't like that scene because I feel sad for the man who was speaking his mind, and he was doing it in a very passionate way, and I know absolutely he's wrong. Like, he is wrong. But that was the way he was raised, and in this city, you get programmed into certain mindsets. In the case of the Southern Pride thing, the We Shall Rise Again, all that stuff, we all know that it's racism, straight up racism. And I felt badly that me and my good friend Ace and Zane actually kind of reeled us back in a little bit. I'm not everybody who knows me personally knows that I hate beating up on people. I don't want to beat on anybody. But I knew what he was saying was code for I'm racist. And I'm sorry, but it is and was. And Ace confronted him, and I jumped in, and it's not my favorite scene only because this is not the cynical road. This is the good road. It's about positive impact. And Zane was the brilliant one who gave us a glimpse of, as an African American, a glimpse of hope that we're going to move forward. We're going to do this thing. And if you want to be that old white guy in Richmond who didn't want to see the monuments come down, guess what? They came down. Live with it. Sorry. Game over. You're done. So join us in making this city amazing in the future.
I'm going to jump in here because that's probably one of my favorite scenes because it's real. It's the reality that we live in. And in order for us to move past, we have to have those conversations. Did you see, I mean, you couldn't see his face, but his passion and purpose for erasing that is the same passion and purpose that we need to move forward. But he was raised to believe differently. And he stands by that. I can't argue that. I mean, we didn't do Hidden in Plain Sight to make your mind change. We did Hidden in Plain Sight to open up your vision. You could still possibly remain racist, but hopefully you understand and respect the conversation as we move forward. I've seen that scene 1,000,000 times. Zane, I'm sure you have too. And so it was something that a lot of times it gets hidden. Like you don't see it out as evident and as passionate as that. But to see that, I'm like, yeah, this is what we're dealing with. This is the world that we're living in. And that passion and purpose, we need to somehow at least put it out there. Because imagine if his passion and purpose was not that. But look at all the folks that are like him as well.
Let me just add, too, that people have asked the question, like, did you get his permission and all that stuff? In my mind, so cameras are rolling. We're filming this situation. He knows what's happening. And out of respect, we blurred his face. It's been pointed out we didn't blur his butt crack. we should have blurred more than his face. But the fact is, I consider
PG for a reason.
Yeah,
So you know.
I consider censorship for us not to put that in there because he knew exactly what was going on and he wanted to speak his mind. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, sadly, in our city, there's a group of people that believe exactly like that man believes. And I'm not going to censor him. I'm not going to not put him in the show just because it's uncomfortable. And that's kind of what our show's about. Mm-hmm. We're the good road. We actually, in the previous season, we filmed a poacher. And there's so many more complexities to his story. And the fact that he's poaching out there and you're like, wow, he's killing, wild game in Africa. That's horrible. He's got his own story. And guess what? He's a victim of things as well. And there's no, judgment in a disparaging way for a set of ideas. Everybody should have the ability to, in fact, in season 2, and Earl can speak to this more, Charleston is really about free speech and the ability to have a free press and to be able to voice your mind. The fact is, as soon as we lose that in this country, we're sunk. Oh, yeah. But, you can also say, yeah, I don't at all agree with your racist ideas. So.
Well, and I am from the Midwest, and I will just say that I don't. Keep talking. Thank you.
You can still be from the Midwest.
Okay. Thanks. I don't think that that's something that people from other regions of the country are fully aware of. I certainly was not. This Southern pride notion of holding on to the Confederate War and everything, I was not aware of that until I moved to the South. And so that was a very hard scene for me to watch, because I tend to be a person of like, how can Richmond be so cool? And yet there are people like that who live here. But that has been my experience in the, almost, 16 years that I've lived in the South. And so I do think it's important for the country to see that and to see that vantage point, as hard as it is to watch. So,
well, I would say, it took me a while to actually understand, because again, Andy Dunsing is the one that crafts the stories. So we shot this stuff all over the place, and he's saying, of all the stuff that we did, what's that story? And if you think about it, it's simple when you understand it, but at the moment, it's the statues are coming down. Then Kehinde Wiley is like, here's another statue. You don't have to all come down. Mm-hmm. And then you have literally right over here, a couple blocks away, you have 12 feet of dirt that's completely just, covered a history that happens. And so if you didn't get that, that's the arc of that whole thing. It's like we're holding on to these things. We're burying some other things. You have some projects like Hidden in Plain Sight that like expose these. And that's the beauty of hopefully these types of conversation starters that we have. It's TV, but it's a beginning of something much more. And hopefully that's what we're trying to do.
So I'm going to direct this one to Zane, but then it's open to anybody who wants to chime in. So Valerie had a very poignant quote: "Monuments deserve a monumental response." So Kehinde Wiley's monument was installed at the VMFA in December of 2019. And then a few months later, the beautifully transformed Robert E. Lee monument became a national news. And then just a few weeks ago, it was finally taken down. It's important that Richmond gets this right, not despite our history, but because of it. What do you see as being the next steps for us as a community?
No pressure.
Yeah.
Solve all our problems.
I was the guy who said we should innovate, and now it's my turn, I guess.
Innovate, boy.
Yeah, thanks. So, I think if I'll relate this to an innovation problem, right? Change doesn't happen overnight. It happens from a series of very small steps. Sometimes it's not linear either. Like, you plan, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and it'll work out. That typically doesn't happen, right? Anyone who's in startup business, entrepreneurship, how many times have the best laid plans actually worked out? And so I think it starts with a broad array of small acts. And, I'm not going to diminish Dontrese, but I think what he's doing is one part. Conversations like this are another part. There's a whole chorus of things that need to happen, and one of those, or the collection of those, will catalyze something. What? I don't think we know. But, with the right intention and with the right movement, we can at least channel that into hopefully a positive direction for the city. Look, I'm really hopeful for Richmond. I know I've said this to Earl and Craig when we were...
Yeah, what's his name?
Yeah, the guy here. Yeah, Earl and Craig when we were going through this. There is no other city, no offense to Charleston, that
I don't even take offense.
That I think in the country could tell the story of racial past, racial present, the future of racism or lack thereof. There's no city better positioned than Richmond to do that. It's now our job to, I think, own it, right? Some of that is owning the past, yes. Some of that's owning the present, but I think we have to think about owning the future. Like, what does that mean? What are we actually going to do as a city to really be the world's leader in figuring this out? because no one else is better positioned than we are. We have a group of wildly talented people all across the city in a variety of different places. The city's 50% white, 50% black on average, right?
Yeah.
You know, we got a lot of people coming in from out of town, right? I mean, this is a really great melting pot for really cool stuff to happen. We just have to want to own that future and then do something about it.
Wow. Nice job, Zane.
By the way, this man has a doctorate in physics. Sorry, I just had to get that in.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to follow that?
I won't write any equations, I promise.
Anybody want to add to that?
No, are you kidding? No, not me.
I have a question about you guys who have been, certainly this first episode that all that most of us have seen, focusing on what happened on Monument Avenue last summer. What's the best outcome of all of that? What should happen to Monument Avenue in your collective estimation?
I really don't care about Monument Avenue. Sorry, I just don't. I mean, I live so close to it. I live in Carytown and I'm close by. Monument Avenue now is a thing of the past. And even the name, Monument Avenue, is a thing of the past. What I care about most is, and yeah, we're going to, you know, the VMFA, I think, has been commissioned to come up with an idea for what the avenue, yeah. So if our history is about a bunch of Confederate soldiers in 2021, we failed as a city. So I care more about black business in Richmond. I care more about involving African Americans in all segments of society, not just in Richmond, by the way, but in the counties and beyond. Exactly what Zane described as, so we have a group of us, Dontrese, Zane, and a guy named Q, who's a good friend of ours. We meet and we talk about how can we action this beyond just the media. Like, we want to actually be part of, you know, civil rights 2.0 or 3.0. Because, okay, Robert E. Lee actually came down the day after we premiered this episode at the Richmond International Film Festival.
Which is my birthday.
Which was Dontrese's birthday. God was shining down on us and saying, yeah, we're going to get that monument removed right after your show. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that was, like, for me, a marker, like, how do we make the city better? And it's been known for too long as the capital of the Confederacy. Let's make no mistake, a rebellion against our country by people who wanted to keep, I don't believe in all that Northern aggression BS. This was people who wanted to make sure that people of color were enslaved, period. And I know I was not born in the city. I was born in Bangkok. But I can tell you right now, I've lived here so long. My children were born here. I don't want to be any part of that history. I just don't. It's not a pride. It's not a, you know, I keep hearing this stuff. And by the way, they keep talking about erasing history. Look at Lumpkin's jail. You want to talk about erasing history? We don't need Robert E. Lee on an avenue telling us about history. We just don't. We know that history. We don't know the history of the Devil's Half Acre. And, you know, to me, it's simple. I don't even know why it's a question, but that's me.
I share your vision going forward.
Yeah.
Completely. But I get, my question is, what for the city, for those who embrace the history of it, whichever side you're on, what is the best use of those plinths, if you will, of going forward? Should they stay there? Should we put gardens in there? I'm just curious, since you spent so much time on it and the symbolism of that's been there for a century or not quite, but whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's the best thing that we can do as a city with that avenue?
Yeah, and I love that question because
Wait, let me just set it up again. This is the gentleman that took the avenue, the boulevard to the Arthur Ashe Avenue. Yeah.
so I was torn for a long time on what to do with the monuments, and I was totally like, take them son of a guns down. But as we started to as we started to do Hidden in Plain Sight, and we started to realize the energy from our younger generations, and we started to see the community start to partner, the community start to come together. And, Craig mentioned all these generals, but look at the new generals now. Look at the new generals that have started to lead our city, that have tagged this differently. I am now to the point where, okay, you take the guy and the horse off, you leave the pedestal there because it's important for this moment in time. But we can't just stay in this moment of time. We've got to continue to move forward. What we need to do is make sure that we completely involve the community in whatever we do. The only reason Arthur Ashe got changed as quickly as it got changed is because we involved the community. They were a part of it. Now, whatever we decide to do with it, whether it's gardens, whether it's community space, whether it's green space, whether it's activities, whatever the case may be, whether we even change the name of it, Monument Avenue, maybe it's something different. I don't know. But it's so important to involve the community, because if we don't, we're going to lose again, and we're going to continue to lose. And so to your point, when you said, we're the capital of the Confederacy, that's where it starts. We're no longer that. So what are we now as a city, as a state, right? What are we now, and how we're going to use that to leverage us coming together, either side, to make it a space where everyone feels comfortable and it's inclusive.
Of course.
To pull on both of those threads. So when you're discussing change, you're right. I'm envisioning emergence theory, right? So that's coming. Are there any civilizations, any communities that have done this well that you're looking at as best practice? Because it's happened. You referenced Germany in the film, and right? Like, has anybody done it right and kept the past and pulled it forward that we can pull from? I just think about that.
I'm just gonna make a quick reference to the fact that Earl and I and my family, my wife and my daughter, we were just in Detroit for a gala for something called Global Health Charities. And if there's ever a city that has embraced its history and understood why its history has not always been the greatest, there's been a lot of exploitation of workers. Mm-hmm. Henry Ford was not a great man.
No.
And it's industrialization. And if you know anything about the history of the Ford Motor Company, people would die on the assembly line, and they would not stop the assembly line. Mm-hmm. They would cart them out. So that city is now being transformed into a very diverse city, a beautiful city. It's like everything. And it's not just, 8 Mile and Eminem and his influence. It's all kinds of beautiful things in the arts. And yes, this can be done. If you want to see how this is done, look at Detroit.
Yeah, this is an early Motown.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to switch gears. So James Brown, Billie Holiday, Ray Charles, Nat King Cole, Louis Armstrong, Earl Bridges, and Dontrese Brown all made appearances at the Hippodrome.
That's how I got it.
So, Earl, I know you and Dontrese were talking while Dean and David were setting up equipment and doing their thing. Did you get a chance to to really see their process and how that works. And can you speak on that? And can you also speak on just the energy in that space and how you felt in there?
It's interesting, when we went there, it wasn't that long after the Oklahoma, Tulsa, the bombings that had happened, in the Black Wall Street. I don't think it was months after we were right there. And we were talking about a black community that had been equally as vibrant as what had happened in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. And so I was familiar with what they had done on the VR thing. David actually traveled with us to Myanmar and Thailand, and we were inside of a maximum security prison. I knew the power of the VR thing, and I saw the vision that these guys, Dontrese and Dean and David, had come up with. And so I knew the potential. But I'm just like you guys. I mean, I probably passed by the Hippodrome. I never had been inside the Hippodrome. I certainly didn't know what the Chitlin Circuit was. And so you're sitting there, and you start to get a sense that there are stories that are all around you in these areas, and they needed to be brought to life. And so for me, it's exciting. I can't wait to really experience it. You guys will get a chance to do a little bit of that tonight, kind of see what that is. But for me, I and I can see the potential in Charleston. I can see the potential in a million other places, and I can't wait for that project to be rolled out. But again, I'm the Charlestonian that's not from Richmond that really loves Richmond through this whole process. And some of that is the messy past that they have. Some of that's the messy past that all of us have, that me personally I have. So I think there's a redemptive component of it that you could say, once you know it, what was it John Lewis, thing, if you see something wrong, you've got to do something about it type thing. But so for me, just, sitting with Dontrese, thinking about this space, doing the interview with him, I was as inspired as anyone else. I mean, I'm just a recipient of, what's being done in there. So for me, it was super powerful. And there's so much upside on this stuff, so much upside.
Yeah. And how cool was it when Earl asked about Dontrese's son? And then it became the Quincy question. I just love that moment in the show.
Now, that's pretty tight, but I'll tell you what's so funny though, is we had no freaking clue what we were doing.
Oh, not behind the curtain.
When David said, "Oh, my friend Craig got this show called The Good Road. They're gonna be in Richmond. I told him we were working on this project. He wants to meet you." So Craig comes to the office. We sit there, we chop it up, and it's like, all right, great. We're gonna get on a call with with Earl and Andy. So we're gonna Zoom in. You were in, I think. I think you came in. I can't remember. We had so many. But then they were just like, oh yeah, we just, we're gonna come down here this week. We're gonna start shooting, and we want you all to be, ready for it. So we didn't think anything about it. We were just like, yeah, all right. What the heck are we gonna talk about? Because we really had no idea what we were doing at this point. I think we had just kind of figured out as we did the scout what we wanted to do. We just didn't know how we were going to do it. And so when they started filming us and we're talking and we're having these great conversations, then we're at the rooftop of the Hoff, and then Craig comes to me and he says, hey, because I thought we were done with our portion of it. I thought we were going to have 3 minutes, or something. And then Craig says, hey, why don't you come in on this other scene? We want to get you involved in that. I was like, no. I said, we got our space. We got our shine. We're good. And he goes, no, because I think you're going to be more important to the episode than we had initially thought. And so I was like, all right, cool. I talked to David about it, and David was like, yeah, that's straight. So we sat down and we did that. But we were like, holy shit, now we got to get this damn thing done.
Let me say, this is a little bit BTS kind of behind the scenes kind of thing, because again, I will tell you, all the best scenes that we've ever had on The Good Road, I feel pretty certain when saying this, it was never scripted. We didn't know. We walk into and we went to Lumpkin's jail area, and that's probably the most poignant. You're walking in there and you're starting really just, taking it all in. And I've passed it a million times. Y'all have probably done it as well. I mean, it's right here. I mean, you go from downtown to here, you have to pass right by it underneath that bridge we went in. And I would say that those are the times in the filming of the show that I think are the most magical. Always, it's we can think, hey, we're gonna go interview these people or that people. When you're there, and then it's like, holy, we're here, and there's a lot, and it's just the right people, the right locations. And that's where the magic happens, I would say, almost always on the show.
And by the way, there's that scene that Dontrese references. It didn't actually make its way into that episode. I'm super excited about the fact that the first episode is the Richmond racial reconciliation episode. The last episode, which is episode 8, is about balance. And we talk about things like climate change. We talk with Kenneth Branham, who's the chief of the Monacan Nation, talk about Rasovic, which is the site where the Monacan Nation had, thousands of villages. We talk about with Swami Dayananda about the environment and how spiritually the environment's important to us. And then we conclude that with that Hofgarden rooftop discussion with Zane and Dontrese, Ace Callwood, and Rashida Creighton, who, if you don't know that name, Rashida and 2 other partners have started something called the Jackson Ward Collective. So we have this, and by the way, she was the very first African-American woman to be in the very first year of Maggie Walker Governor's School, which got redone, as you know, if you're from Richmond, where my daughter went to school. And we have great conversation. So we start with Richmond, and then we end with a kind of a broader Virginia story. And so, Charleston gets play a couple times in the season, but not the front and the back. I'm sorry.
RVA's bookended.
RVA
season 2.
Good oyster roasters there.
Oh my God!
Oh my God! Yeah, the best.
Y'all come on down.
So not so long ago, I said to Carlos, I want to ask you about your creative process for composing music. So Carlos, will you share with us your creative process for composing music for The Good Road?
And can I interject inside of that?
Please.
In season 2, what % of all of the music is canned library music? Less than 2%?
Very little.
You guys, if you ever get a chance to just sit in here and just watch him compose as it's happening, it's magic. Magic right here in this studio, right there. Yeah. So
and just real quick, so the first time that I saw this episode was at RIFF. I didn't want to see it. I wanted to see it with the crowd, but I came in here one day, and I think they were working on the Puerto Rico episode, and you were just all in it. Just listen. I mean, it is amazing how they walk through the scenes and make sure the right music goes up and down and all that stuff. It's actually pretty cool.
So, how do you come up with this stuff? Okay, so the process goes like this. We get in a cut from Andy, the editor. And editors love to do this. Is Dick still in here, or did you have to take off? Okay. Anyway, editors, love them, hate them. They love to stick in what we call temp tracks. Now, these temp tracks can be from anything. They can be from the biggest blockbuster you saw last year or something you saw 10 years ago. Point is, they stick music in there that is not available. And it is done by the very best people on the planet. You can have anything from a Bob Dylan song to whatever. And, it's like, well, that ain't going to go in there, because legally, to get the sync rights for these things is literally many thousands of dollars, more than I'm paid by these guys. So that isn't going to happen.
They pay.
So what you have to do is listen to this and kind of go, oh, that's nice. That's cute. now what are we going to do? And knowing they've fallen totally in love with this stuff that they've stuck in there, right? So, but Andy's cool. He is cool. And every once in a while, he actually sticks in something that just flat out doesn't work. And I love that because I go, okay, whew, good, I can just go. No, but usually he gives me stuff that gives me some pretty good hints. It's a good starting point. It gives me the spirit of the scene, you know, even though I'm going to go in a different direction, it still tells me what he's trying to get out of the scene, which is really important. You know, because the scenes don't necessarily start the way you think they're going to go. And sometimes what he will put in there is something that's really kind of morbid and heart-tugging and, you know, heartstrings. And you're listening to it and you go, why are we hearing this? You know, this guy's talking about, you know, getting an ice cream cone. I don't get it. But you realize that what he's talking about, where the conversation goes very quickly, does need this tone, needs this musical tone. So it's very good to have this stuff as a reference. So that's a good start. That does inform me a little bit. And every once in a while, Andy sticks in something that just cracks me up. I mean, it just breaks me up. It may send me in a different direction, but it's still good information. And I got to tell you this quick story. So this will wrap it up. This will give you the idea. So the very first episode, the very first show that we ever do, we're in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm like, I know we're getting a show about Bangkok, Thailand. What the hell am I going to write that sounds like it's Bangkok music? I mean, you know, I don't even know what they listen to in Bangkok, right? I'm just a composer. So I'm looking for information here. So Andy sticks in this tune. He had gotten some record from some Thai band that was imitating Chicago. And it was 29 to 6-4 done by a really bad Bangkok band. Just, you know, it sounded bad. The singer was like, you don't sound like that, you know. I'm like listening to this thing going like, oh my God, you know. I mean, I kind of get it. You know, they're at night. They're in the middle of Bangkok. It's, you know, they're introducing the show. They want it to be kind of nuts. They're riding around in tuk-tuks and getting crazy and drinking beer, and they're just like, here we are in Bangkok. This place is nuts. It's crazy. It's the craziest place on earth. And I got to write a piece of music that sounds like the craziest thing on earth, right? And it's got to sound like a Taiwanese or some Thai version of Chicago. So I went in a totally direction. I went in a direction that was more like the Pretenders, with horns. And seriously, that's what I did. I just kind of went more like that kind of raw rock thing. I went, you know, I'm not going to do the Chicago thing. We're going to do this. But I do like the horns. I think the horns are kind of cool. So we added that. And then I went to Earl and I said, Earl, I need lyrics. And we need a singer. And we were going to get a Thai singer.
In Thai.
We're going to get a Thai singer to sing this thing because I loved the vibe that Andy had thrown at us. Well, this went around. I wrote a track that I really liked, and I think they liked it. And it opens up the first show, but we didn't have the Thai singer, and we didn't have the Thai lyrics. And you know, this can keeps getting kicked down the road, and we've got to deliver the damn episode. And I've got my part done, and I'm like going, come on, guys, got to find me a singer, got to find me some lyrics, and finally, we end up, Earl sang it.
I not only sang it, I wrote it in Thai. I don't write music. I've never written, that's the first song I've ever written.
Lyrics.
Ever. In Thai, with like this concept piece that they had done. And actually the funny thing is, because it was a homage back to when Craig and I were kids in high school, so I do the countdown. And so in Thai, I say, okay, I want to do this like throwback to what a song was popular when Craig and I were in high school. So the countdown is 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9, right? In Thai. And that's actually it. So if you speak Thai, and actually send it to our alumni, the people that graduated high school with Craig and I, and did anyone know that? And they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's an Easter egg. And it became this kind of punk version of Thai or whatever. So who can screw up punk? I realized later that's why they gave me punk.
So Earl, can you give us a rendition?
Count it down.
That helps Samsung something go.
So that's how we write the music for The Good Road.
That's awesome.
That was a twist I was not expecting. Many talents. Many talents.
Hey, Jen, we probably should wrap this up just so everybody can get some more refreshments.
Okay. Well, I feel like I had a wrapping up question.
The final question is.
Yeah, where's the beer?
Dun, dun, dun,
Okay,
dun,
well,
dun.
we'll just do this then. Dontrese, how can people find out more information about Hidden in Plain Sight?
That's very easy. You can go to our website, hiddeninplainsight.org. You can follow us on there. And you can experience the Hidden in Plain Sight from that standpoint as well. It's a web-based platform, so you can look at it on your phone. You can look at it on your computer. If you have a VR headset, you can download it within your VR headset and look at it that way. You can follow us on our social media handles, Hidden in Plain Sight Project, and check us out there. We've got a lot of great things coming up, so stay tuned. And we're looking for plenty of volunteers if anyone's interested in helping us out as we're in the stages of fundraising. Continue to try to build this so we can expand it nationwide, globally, as far as we can reach.
And we're going to have demos.
Yes, we'll have. We've got some VR headsets outside. David, we'll get those set up. And if anyone doesn't know David, he's the tech guy. This guy is a mastermind. So as you start to look through the VR headset, all the technology, all the animation, the sound design, the graphics, David is the mastermind behind that. You'll hear my voice, but the script was written by our screenwriter, Dean, who's not here, and all the facts and sourcing, he does all of that. So you get a chance to experience that. So we'll be really quick and get those things set up. We have 3 headsets. You can jump in really quick, experience it for a little bit, and then pass it to the next if you don't mind.
Let me also just say in closing that, Zane's been a great friend to the show. He has a company called Zada Strategy. He's spent decades in marketing. Check them out. Also, the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, Valerie Oliver was gracious enough to help us out. And the VMFA, if you just look up VMFA Virginia, it'll come right up. And we have a guest here tonight, Okra Magazine. They've been a very good partner with us in getting the word out in terms of magazines. So check out Okra, like the vegetable, not Oprah, magazine. And so many other friends and partners. And also, finally, we have Terry Gow here, who represents the Home for Virginia's Public Media, VPM. They are a huge help to us in distributing our show in this area. VPM is a friend of the show, and thanks to them. And of course, World Channel and American Public Television, who actually distribute our show. Thank you to them. And good night. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
And watch Shaco
Nice job
Sessions
to our
live every day.
hostess. Nice job.
Yeah.
Jen Bear.